Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today I'm going to be going over my final breakdown of the Steelers' schedule and giving my official predictions game by game for the upcoming 2024 season. Basically just an overall breakdown for the Steelers. And, about a month or two back, whenever the schedule was officially released, I did over an hour and a half long breakdown of the Steelers' schedule, and I knew, after I finished it, I was like, no one's going to watch this. Who's going to listen to me ramble for over an hour and a half? So I'm putting this out because it's going to be a more condensed version of that, so hopefully more people will click on it when they see that it's not, an hour and 33 minutes. And also, I have changed a couple picks on here, so without further ado, let's just get into it because this is going to be a longer video. So starting off, week 1, we go down to Atlanta to play the Falcons. So initially in that long breakdown I made, I had us winning this game, but I view the Falcons as a different team now with two key acquisitions, with Matthew Judon and with Justin Simmons. I think are extremely underrated signings for the Atlanta Falcons, and I've kind of talked myself out of this game for the Steelers because I think that the Atlanta Falcons are going to potentially have the best secondary in football. They just locked up A.J. Terrell long-term. Jessie Bates, you could argue, is the best safety in the NFL. I would go Minkah, of course, but there's an argument to be made there for Jessie Bates. He's a stud. And to pair that with Justin Simmons, who I know was kind of sitting in free agency forever, but I just don't really understand. He was still a really good player last year. He still got $8 million, so you can't tell me there, wasn't a market for Justin Simmons. So that is a brutal test for Russell Wilson, who's officially been named our starter. It was kind of inevitable. This is a really rough test for Russell Wilson in his first game with the Steelers because, like I said, it's potentially the best secondary in the entire league, and it's not like we have a stacked receiver room as well. So if they start doubling George Pickens and you got to rely on guys like Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Quez Watkins, look out. I mean, the X factor in this game would definitely be our run game because our run game is going to have to carry. If we are going to win this game, it's going to be on the back of Najee Harris's shoulders. So yeah, I don't see us winning this one. I have us starting off the season with a loss, unfortunately. Last year I came into the season with pretty high hopes, and I said we were going to beat the 49ers week 1 last year, and we got fucking pummeled in that game. We lost 30-7. It was one of the most embarrassing games I've ever watched. And so hopefully with me this year predicting us to lose, we'll end up winning. We'll see what happens, but we'll start off the year with a loss at 0-1. Then we go to week 2 at Denver. Seems like the Broncos have been getting a lot of hype after the preseason because Bo Nix performed a lot better than people were expecting. If you've listened to me, I don't take anything away from preseason, especially if you're a Steelers fan. Last year we were incredible. We were like the best team in preseason. Kenny Pickett looked like fucking Tom Brady out there. Every time Kenny Pickett was in a drive last year, it resulted in a touchdown. So going off that, we should have been incredible last year, and we were still a very rocky, very struggling team. It's still kind of crazy to me that we made the playoffs last year with all the chaos, with having a negative point differential, with the quarterback play being such a mess, with the play calling being such a mess. It's still a credit to Tomlin that we made the playoffs last year because we had no business in the playoffs. And so looking at Denver, though, yeah, Bo Nix, I get it. He's getting a lot of hype. I don't buy into any of it. Preseason doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I think the Broncos are going to be a pretty bad team. When you just look at it, it's not rocket science. The Broncos just simply don't have a very good roster. And even though we have unproven stuff going on with our team, most notably quarterback, the O-line's young, we're trying to rebuild it, but we could potentially have a top 5 defense here, and that is going to wreak havoc on a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix and a bad offensive line in Denver. So, and of course, this is going to be a really interesting one as well. I almost forgot. This is Russell Wilson going back to Denver to get his revenge on Sean Payton. That's going to be fascinating to see if he's able to elevate and, get his revenge. So I do have us beating the Broncos. That takes us to 1-1. So we go back to Pittsburgh in week 3 for our home opener of the season, where we're hosting the LA Chargers. Obviously, fun matchup here. I mean, these two teams, I think, are kind of similar in terms of the philosophy they've embraced with their culture, because Jim Harbaugh is going to build a run-heavy team. He's going to prioritize running the ball. He said he views O-linemen as weapons, And, he's brought in some power running backs, especially Gus Edwards. And when you look at our team, I think we're going to have a heavy emphasis, with so much uncertainty with Russell Wilson. I think the focal point of the Steelers' offense is going to be the run game with Najee Harris and with that O-line hopefully being improved with all the draft capital we've dumped into it. So I see this being a very old-school, defensive-oriented, run game-oriented, low-scoring game. I don't think this is going to be a very fun game to watch. But I do have the Steelers coming out on top. It is the home opener. I think you can argue the Steelers have the better roster. The Chargers lost a lot of guys, especially those wide receivers. This is going to be a completely different, night and day operation in terms of what the offense is going to look like. Where in years prior, Justin Herbert was the focal point of the offense. He's no longer the focal point. The run game is now. So it might take a while for the Chargers to really get their game plan rolling and Justin Herbert adjusting to this new system. So I'm going to go with the Steelers here in our home opener to win. That brings us to 2-1. So I have the Steelers going on a pretty good run here. So you might hear the record I have for them going into the bye and be like, oh, you're just a biased Yinzer. You think they're going to win every game. No, it's going to get brutal after the bye. So keep that in mind. They're going to go on a pretty good stretch here in my predictions, but keep in mind, after the bye, it gets brutal, and we're going to get into that. But going into Week 4, we're going to Indianapolis to play the Colts, obviously the land of Pat McAfee. I'm sure he'll be at that game. This is an interesting one. It really is, because the Colts, if you saw my video the other day, I think yesterday I put it out, top 5 most intriguing teams, the Colts were on there. I'm fascinated by the Colts, and I've now changed my take to where I think they're a playoff team. I do think the Colts will be a wild card team. I think they're going to be pretty good. However, when you look back to last year, it was a pretty competitive game for the first half when we played the Colts, and we had the worst quarterback in the NFL at the helm, Mitch Trubisky, who shouldn't even have a fucking job in the NFL. And we were competitive in that game, and then as it went on, Trubisky just completely shit his pants in that game, and that's why it got pretty ugly towards the end of that game. But in terms of that first half, we were competitive with the worst quarterback in the league. So, there's no way, even if Russ is washed, there's no way he's worse than Trubisky was in that game. So I see us having a much more competitive game here. And I'm picking the Steelers to beat the Colts. I'm not as confident on this one, though, because I do think the Colts are going to be really good, and Anthony Richardson has a chance to be a superstar. So I'm going to go Steelers barely here. Definitely one I would not bet on. I'm not confident in it, but I'm just going Steelers. Next up, we have Week 5 versus the Dallas Cowboys. This should always a fun matchup when these two teams play. One of the old rivalries back in the 90s. So I have this as a win. And if you're a longtime listener of Steel City Sports, you know that the Dallas Cowboys are the team I'm probably the most critical of. People think I hate the Cowboys. I don't hate the Cowboys. I don't hate Dak. I just view myself as the truth teller for the Cowboys. I view myself as someone who tells it like it is, and that's why the Cowboys fans don't like me, is because I give them the unfiltered truth about the Cowboys, and that's their fool's gold. I'm probably going to be saying it all throughout this year as well, because people still really haven't learned their lesson with the Cowboys. People still think they're a contending team, even after they, people don't understand how embarrassing that loss in the playoffs was. And I don't want to get into it now, but just looking at this game in general, I think the number one problem for Dallas is, number one, their run game is going to suck this year. They arguably have the worst running core in the entire league. They just signed Dalvin Cook. He bounced around from teams. He barely got any playing time on the Ravens, who were decimated by injuries last year. So I don't know how much he has left in the tank. You have Zeke, who was god-awful last year in New England. And even his last year with the Dallas Cowboys, back when they still had a good line in 2022, he averaged 3.8 yards per carry. So Zeke is completely washed in my eyes. Rico Dowdle, I don't know. So we've talked about this. Anytime Dak Prescott gets under 100 yards from his running game, he wins about 30% of his games. And I see, one of probably the strongest suit of our team is our front seven. So We're going to have pressure on Dak this whole game. We're going to be stuffing the run this whole game. It's just a terrible matchup, I think, for the Dallas Cowboys. And that's why I'm picking us to win this game. So that would bring us up to 4-1. Week 6, we fly out to Vegas to play the Raiders. Kind of an interesting one because we played the Raiders in Vegas last year. I don't know how frequent that is to happen, to play an out-of-division opponent in the same stadium back-to-back years. Kind of weird, but yeah, we're going out to Vegas. We beat them last year with Kenny Pickett at the helm. I think that was a Sunday night game. I know it was a night game. I don't know if it was Sunday or Monday night. I'm pretty sure Sunday. But, yeah, I mean, I think the result's going to be the same. I don't think the Raiders are a very good team. They're a very low-ceiling team with Gardner Minshew at the helm. Yeah, I like some of the Raiders players a lot. Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. They have some really, really good players, but as a whole, it's just such a low-ceiling team. I'm not bought in on the Raiders at all, so I think that should be a pretty easy win there. And really, the only reason why the Raiders were in that game last year was because our secondary was completely toast last year. It was burnt by Devontae Adams. He had the best game of his year last year was against us, against Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson, who they're just terrible in that game and pretty terrible for the whole season. They're both gone now. So, whether it's Joey Porter Jr. or Dante Jackson, whoever has the burden to guard Devontae, I don't think it's going to be quite as brutal as it was in that game last year. So I have us beating the Raiders. That's 5-1. Then week 7 and week 8, we get back-to-back games against the New York teams. In week 7, we get the Jets. Both the New York games are at home. They're in Pittsburgh. The Jets one is funny to me because when I put out a video criticizing the Jets a couple weeks back, I had a Jets fan in the comment tell me that he was going to be in Pittsburgh for this game and he wanted to meet up with me in the parking lot. And basically he said he was going to beat the shit out of me for criticizing the Jets. And I will never forget that. I think that's hilarious. I think it encapsulates the Jets fan base. I think we're going to win this game. Again, if you're a longtime listener, I've been pretty critical of the Jets. I don't think they're going to be that good. I get on paper, this is an interesting team, but just looking at it on paper really overlooks the flaws with the New York Jets, particularly with Aaron Rodgers. People seem to forget with Aaron Rodgers that he simply was not a good quarterback the last time he played a fully healthy season in Green Bay. He was basically league average in every statistical category his final year in Green Bay. That was 2 seasons ago. So now, on top of it being 2 years removed and he wasn't that good, now he's 40 and coming off an Achilles injury. So I'm going to be sounding like a broken record all year long with Aaron Rodgers, but I just don't think he's going to be that good this year. Call me crazy. I just don't see him being that good. A 40-year-old off an Achilles wasn't even that good last time we saw him play. And the O-line is held together by Band-Aids and bubblegum with all kinds of old and injury-prone guys. Other guys on the offense as well. A lot of question marks. Mike Williams, probably the most injury-prone player in the NFL. Breece Hall, they're going to be asking him to do basically everything for this offense. So Breece Hall is going to have a lot of pressure on him. And he had a pretty brutal injury his rookie year as well. So that's another thing to look out for. Garrett Wilson, I like. I don't know if Garrett Wilson is a true number one. We're going to see that for sure. The defense is elite, but again, when you look at the whole of the team, Aaron Rodgers, my problem's there. The overall problem with the Jets is just old, injured, and I don't like their coaches at all. I think Robert Saleh will be fired this year when they miss the playoffs. They have probably the worst offensive play caller in the NFL with Nathaniel Hackett. So I don't want to rant anymore about the Jets. I just don't think they're going to be that good. Even though the Steelers, it's not like we're a perfect team, but we have a lot more solidified than the Jets do. I think they're just kind of all over the place. Week 8, hosting the New York Giants. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. This will probably be one of the better-looking Steeler games just because the Giants, I think, are legitimately going to be one of the worst teams. Their defense, their front 7 is good. Their secondary is questionable. Their offense is going to be bottom 5 in the NFL this year. The Giants are going to be a mess. So that should be an easy win for the Steelers. That puts us at 7-1 going into the bye. So like I said, You might hear that and think, oh, you're just going to, pick the Steelers to win every game. No, it's going to get brutal here after the bye. So keep that in mind. So going in the bye, I have them at 7-1. Let's start now at Week 10 at Washington to play the second overall pick, Jayden Daniels. I have us losing this game for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think Washington is a really underlooked team. They had an incredible offseason of just bringing in, new GM, new coach, new quarterback, a ton of veteran signings, including Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler. I really like this team. I like the Commanders a lot, and I have a lot of faith in Jayden Daniels. I think he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. So that's 1 point already. They're just a good team if Jayden Daniels can play, which I think he will be able to. But number two, this happens at least one time every season. And I've talked about it last year when I did my predictions. It happens at least one time every year when Mike Tomlin is the coach of the Steelers. We overlook, a lesser opponent whenever we play like the Ravens or the Browns the next week. And in Week 11, we play the Baltimore Ravens for the first time of the season in Pittsburgh. I think they're going to overlook the Washington Commanders because they're going to be focused on the Ravens. And so with Washington having a good team and with them overlooking them, I have the Commanders beating us in Week 10, bringing us to a record of 7-2. Week 11, we come back to Pittsburgh, like I said, to play the Baltimore Ravens. I have us losing that game. I have the Ravens, I'm going to spoil it here. I have the Ravens sweeping us this year. I don't think we have a shot. I know they're always close games, but I think that the gap in terms of talent between the two rosters is night and day. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens, I think, are the second best team in the NFL right now behind the Kansas City Chiefs. I would pick the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl if it weren't for the Chiefs, and I learned my lesson, never pick against the Chiefs, but that's how much I like the Ravens. I think they're going to be incredible. I think the pairing of Lamar and Derrick Henry is going to be sensational. Their defense, they lost some guys last year, but they were historically great, and they have some of the best defensive players in the league on that team. I don't see our offense being able to keep up with that Baltimore offense with the MVP Lamar. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think they're going to kill us. So that puts us at 7-3. Week 12, we go to Cleveland to play the Browns. I have us sweeping the Browns. Now, that might be like I'm a Browns hater or whatever. Maybe I kind of am a little bit, but I don't think, again, the Browns are another team. I don't think they're going to be like a dumpster fire or anything. I don't think they're going to be terrible, but I don't think they're going to be like a playoff team like they were last year. Like, people don't understand how bizarre a season they had last year to start 5 different quarterbacks and still make the playoffs. That is completely unprecedented, and you don't have Joe Flacco anymore, so you have to solely rely on Deshaun Watson. And I've done my spiel on Deshaun countless times on this channel. He's not good. He's not going to be good again. I think Deshaun kind of is what he is. He's a below-average starting quarterback that you're paying, I think $44 million this year, and then it goes up. The cap hit goes, I think, up to like 60-something mil next year. So that's a whole other conversation for the Browns and Deshaun Watson. But in terms of this year, yeah, I don't see them being very good. Their defense is cool, but their defense kind of got exposed against Houston in the playoffs last year. So it's like maybe that kind of follows them into this regular season. To go with my problems with Deshaun, Nick Chubb, I don't know if he's ever going to play again. I mean, like, have you guys looked into how devastating that injury was to Nick Chubb? It wasn't like a clean breaking of the bone. Like, basically everything in the guy's knee just blew up. So I don't know how good he's going to be when he gets back. Jerome Ford, pretty below average back. There's just not a lot to like outside of some good defensive players, and I think Kevin Stefanski's really good, but just Deshaun really, for me, brings the Browns down. So, yeah, I have us beating them there, putting us at 8-3, our first win after the bye. Then we go to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. I have this as a loss. I have us trading 1-1 with the Bengals. So for us going there, I have us losing that game. The Bengals, I don't know quite how high their ceiling is. Like, the Bengals, for me, are one of the most difficult teams to predict because when they have that Burrow-Chase connection on the field, they can win any game they're in. And I'm even including the Chiefs. Like, we've seen it happen. That duo is one of the best in the NFL right now. So they're live to win any game. But in terms of, like, their ceiling, in terms of being, like, a playoff team and a Super Bowl contender, their defense is nowhere near what it once was. They also lost their offensive play caller, Brian Callahan, who's now the head coach in Tennessee. They lost Joe Mixon. Trey Hendrickson once traded. T. Higgins wants money. Jamar Chase is holding out. There's a lot of shit going on with the Bengals. So, although I have them beating us in this game, I don't know how high their ceiling is. They have a pretty easy schedule because they're playing a fourth-place schedule, so maybe that will help them out. But I don't know if I view Cincinnati as contenders. You know, when just last year they were my pick to win the Super Bowl. It's kind of crazy how quick things can change because I can see them pretty easily missing the playoffs this year. Got the L there. That puts us at 8-4. Then week 14, we come back to Pittsburgh to host the Browns. Like I said, I have us sweeping the Browns. You just heard my Browns rant. I don't need to talk about them anymore. Here's where we get into the roughest stretch of the schedule by far, and it goes into just even a bigger narrative that I should have said earlier. We don't play a divisional matchup until week 11. Who the fuck made this schedule? I've never heard of that in the history of schedules. Playing your first divisional matchup in week 11 is fucking psychotic. Like that just makes the back half of the season like so unbelievably difficult. So I don't know who in the scheduling department at the NFL headquarters has it out for the Steelers, but that is a disgrace. And on top of that, we have a 3-game stretch within 10 days, a 10-day stretch where we play the Eagles in Philly, the Ravens in Baltimore, and we host the Chiefs, the back-to-back Super Bowl champions in Pittsburgh. I have us losing all these games. So remember when I said going into the bye, it gets brutal. This stretch of here, within 10 days of playing these elite teams, I have us losing all of them. Philly, I think, is going to be one of the best teams. Philly's my prediction to be the 1 seed in the NFC. They literally have a fucking Pro Bowl roster for their team. They should be incredible this year. And really the only reason they fell apart last year is because they didn't have good play calling on either side of the ball. Now they have incredible coordinators with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. They're going to be really good this year. You know, back when they had legit play calling, they went to a Super Bowl not that long ago. I see that ceiling for the Eagles this year. And the last time we played the Eagles, God, they punched our teeth down our throat. I don't remember all the details because I was actually in Cleveland for a Cavs game for when that game happened. But I remember we were at the bar before that game watching it, and it was like, oh my God, like this is like embarrassing. Obviously different teams now, but I see probably a similar result, especially with it being in Philadelphia. Puts us at 9-5. Baltimore already talked about. We're going to lose to them. That's 9-6. Then the Chiefs, week 17 on Christmas Day. It's going to be a bad Christmas. I have us losing that game as well, 9-7. Last time we played the Chiefs was Big Ben's last game, all the way back in the playoffs for 2021, where people forget the first half of that game was really competitive. It was very close, and then they came out in the second half and just flipped a switch and just fucking pummeled our head. You know, they pulverized us in that second half. And obviously a different team, both very different teams from then, but I still see a similar result from a talent perspective. How the hell are the Steelers going to keep up with Patrick Mahomes? I just don't see that happening at all. So that's going to be a bad Christmas. I can just hear my uncle screaming right now at the TV. And then week 18, the final game of the year against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like I said earlier, I do have us going 1-1 with the Bengals. So I have us winning this one, the final game of the year, which could be a really big game because I have the Bengals and the Steelers kind of in that same tier of wild card potential. You know, their ceiling is a wild card team. So this could potentially be like almost a playoff game if like they have pretty similar records, or if they're like tied and it comes down to this game. This could be a massive game in Pittsburgh where we host the Bengals. So they got their win earlier in the season. I have us winning this game. That puts us at a record of 10-7 on the season. Now, here's the question. Is 10 wins good enough to be a playoff team in the AFC? Typically, yeah, absolutely. If you're a 10-win team, sometimes even if you're just a 9-win team, you can make the playoffs in the AFC. But when you look at the AFC right now and how many good teams there are, there's a chance we win 10 games and still miss the playoffs. I mean, let's just, off the top of my head, you got the Chiefs, You got the Ravens, you got the Texans, you got Buffalo, you got the Dolphins, you have the Colts, you got the Chargers. Even if you want to throw the Jets in there, I don't think they're going to be that good, but you can throw the Jets in there. Who else am I missing? The Jags are going to be in the fray as well. Even in our division, like the Bengals, like I said, they're going to be in there. The Browns, if Deshaun is like decent. There's a lot of teams, at least like 10 out of 15 teams in this conference are going to be viable teams, like decent teams that could be holding on for that final wild card spot. So I'm really, really interested to see if 10 wins will be enough. Last year we won 10 games and we were the final wild card spot, and we got our heads kicked off by the Buffalo Bills. So that's my regular season predictions. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Steelers a lot this season. I'm probably going to be doing a breakdown after every game, giving my thoughts, and just really, really excited for this year. I cannot wait. That's been it for today's video. If you made it this far, really appreciate you listening. Go ahead and drop, even if you're not a Steelers fan, I don't care. I want to hear your predictions. Do you think the Steelers are going to be better than 10-7? Do you think they're going to suck? I'm willing to hear both sides of that argument. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.